You just gotta sell brains.
Yeah, I'm thinking we're well past the zombies. We don't even do the zombies. No zombies required. You do like mind flayers, and
Oh, great.
the whole mall is just filled with mind flayers that have decided. Apparently, I'm back to Stranger Things, but the mall, the mall flayers,
Okay, but you'd still need to
mall
stock
flayers.
the
Yeah.
entire mall would still have brains.
So first up on the show, we have a Weekly Muse, which we haven't done in a few weeks because nothing was amusing enough. Apparently,
Because nothing was weekly enough.
nothing was weekly enough for us. But Alex, you brought this to my attention. Sounds
You're
very
welcome.
interesting. Yes, thank you. There are two different TTRPG projects on Kickstarter that recently surpassed $1 million in their first days of launch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those are. Sorry, I had notes from Alex earlier. MCDM Productions, Flea Mortals!
Very, very high production value right there.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. No notes. And Monte Cook Games presents Old Gods of Appalachia. There, you happy?
Yes.
Great.
Every time now.
Okay.
Please don't.
No. Every time. Every time. Freaking time. They both launched on April 12th.
They
Uh,
both launched on the same day?
they both launched on the same day, and there's still enough
Okay.
market share. So there you go.
Apparently.
At time of this article, which notably is, is April 16th dated, Flea Mortals had raised $1.269 million. Old Gods of Appalachia, 1.076. But, hey, that's pretty impressive.
I assume at the time this podcast is aired, those are probably still running campaigns with a lot more money than they currently have.
I was looking, and it looks like Flea Mortals had like 15 days left to go, so I guess they weren't having a full month campaign.
I
Uh,
don't think they need it.
no, they shouldn't need it.
Could have had a 1 day campaign.
You could have had a 1 day campaign and you'd be just fine. Yeah, speaking of which, I should probably just give you a little bit of an idea. There's, at this point, it would be 20 days left to go on Old Gods of Appalachia, and there would be, was I right about that? 15 days to go on Flea Mortals. So, yeah, they've got time. They've got time.
Plenty of it.
Yeah, and we'll still be going on when this podcast launches. So, have a feeling I'll have to put up some updated numbers for everybody at that point. But those are really impressive. I had to then go and look at what those actually were. But when you said MCDM Productions, I was like, oh, I think I've heard of this one. So that's Matt Colville's company.
What's the DM stand for?
Dungeon Master, I think, or
Okay.
something else. Dungeon Management, I don't know. Matt Colville Dungeon Management.
Digital marketing.
Maybe it's digital marketing. I don't
After
know.
raising that much money? Probably.
Probably, yeah. This is what we put in our portfolio. Look at said Kickstarter. But Flea Mortals was one that I had seen promoted actually on YouTube quite a bit, and it was about taking existing monsters in Dungeons and Dragons and making them fun to run and play so that they're not just kind of like monsters you throw into the mix and then you have the party
okay.
fight them. Making more action oriented, deeper, richer, more interesting monsters from the existing catalog, not new ones, really. Just taking what was already there and trying to expand upon it. So that was something they thought, well, we don't know. I remember actually Colville was saying the only thing is we don't know if there's a market for that. And I think
Well,
there is.
there's apparently a large market for it with over $1 million in funding.
Yeah, especially because the original pledge level that they needed to get to was 600,000. So they've doubled what they originally had. Um, Now, Old Gods of Appalachia, the role playing game, I was not very familiar with, but I was familiar with Monte Cook. They're mostly well known, I think, for Numenera and the Cipher system. And they were looking for $50,000, and boy, they've passed that.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I didn't even know that Old Gods of Appalachia was like a podcast.
Yeah, I didn't either until we looked through that article and it was like, yeah, it's based on this podcast horror series.
Yeah, so hey, at some point maybe I'll have to check that out, see if it's any good. Yeah, so that is actually going to be based on the Cipher system. I was looking down through it thinking, ooh, I wonder if it's going to be based off of it. And yeah, Old Gods of Appalachia is standalone tabletop RPG driven by Cipher, hefty core book, everything that you need to play for an alternate Appalachia in the 1920s. Every time I see that, I think to myself, so basically they're trying to make what? Fallout 76, but about 300 years beforehand or something
Yeah,
like that?
there's a bunch of games that take place in the 1920s that
Oh, yeah.
are in the tabletop sphere. I know when we talked to Chris Bissett, that was 1920s, right? Great Depression era.
Yeah, Great Depression era.
And we had someone else on the old show. I
Well,
forget.
Capers.
Capers, thank
Yeah,
you. That's
when
what
we
it was.
had-
That
when we
was
had Greg.
again 1920s gangster era.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's a good
Um,
time. And those were
I
alternates.
mean, it was a bad time. It was a terrible time.
Apparently, and there was some crazy stuff going on.
Why don't we have like
Crazy
a
stuff.
1970s like disco neon lights, not cyberpunk RPGs?
I don't know. I think they passed right over that for the 80s.
Is there an
there's
80s RPG?
There's a lot of 80s stuff.
Wow.
There's a lot
Why?
of 80s stuff. Well,
Why?
when we were on the old show, they had we had God, now I'm not going to remember what it was. Lasers and Liches. We talked about Lasers and Liches, which is actually, I mean, true. It is D&D, but you know, very, very 80s aesthetic inspired. From the neon look of it. And then, of course, you have to remember that, like, Blood Dragon was, like, an 80s inspired thing. Stranger
I
Things
want-
was 80s inspired. Like,
I want a
lot of stuff is.
1990s like Scholastic Book Fair inspired
You want-
RPG.
You want, like, a Reading Rainbow as an RPG?
No, you remember the book fairs?
I know the book fairs.
And you had those things.
remember the
Yeah,
book
that
fairs.
type of, and the soft drinks from the movie theaters that came in those very, very stylish cups.
You know what it's gonna end up being? It's just gonna be an RPG set in the mall. It's just gonna be the mall RPG.
You know, we talked about this before on the old show, I'm pretty sure, but yes, that needs to be a thing.
Yep,
It's no longer a dungeon crawl. It's a
mall crawl.
mall crawl.
I actually think I watched something about how to design dungeons that have like the loops and that you can almost think of it as a mall. Like that
Yeah, it's
instead of getting like out into the weeds and making it hard to figure out, like if you have levels that you can
Yeah, you just
ascend
get
or
stuck in a
descend.
Macy's.
You just get stuck in Macy's.
Or you could be the infinite IKEA.
Yeah, you just do Mall of America basically. And it's just and hey, you know what? Perfect place to have an RPG about zombies because that's where most zombie horror is.
Yeah, I mean, a little cliche, but you could do it.
Yeah. If you wanted to do that. Well, maybe the mall gets taken over by like monsters that want to run it as a mall. And you have to break their economic system in order to actually hurt them.
You just gotta sell brains.
Yeah, I'm thinking we're well past the zombies. We don't even do the zombies. No zombies required. You do like mind flayers. And
Oh, great.
the whole mall is just filled with mind flayers that have decided. Apparently, I'm back to Stranger Things, but the mall flayers.
Okay, but you'd still need
Mall
to stock
flayers.
the
Yeah.
entire mall would still have brains.
Okay, well they would still have brains, yeah, but for a different reason entirely.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. Zombies and mind flayers. The only difference is terrifying levels of difference.
Well, the zombies will eat the brains, and the mind flayers will want to sap all the energy from the brains, right?
And eat them.
Oh, they still just eat
Sure,
them.
probably. Anyways, Old Gods of Appalachia.
Which does not have a mall in it, so sorry. But the Appalachia part of it too, that is done all over the place.
Of course it is.
Because hey, there's a lot of good mythology in the Appalachia, so I've heard. I just like the idea of like if you set D&D in this world, you could have bards doing the dueling banjos. That'd be great, and then it would summon an Eldritch Horror. But at any rate, those two systems, those two RPGs came out same time, and in just a handful of days hit 1 million, which is well over what their funding goals were for that. Now, I was looking to just find out if that means that they've hit all of their stretch goals. And I can tell you that for Old Gods of Appalachia, they actually, and I don't know if this was added later just because of how popular it was, but they do have one outstanding stretch goal at present at the 1.1 million mark, where they're going to add in new NPCs, but everything else has been unlocked.
Yeah.
It does look, from the look of it at least, that this might have been something added later. Afterward, but
I don't always understand why you'd want to keep adding stretch goals to a project, because that would just make the cost of the project go up.
Yeah, there is a real cautionary tale about adding too much for stretch goals, just because you've seen way too many that decided, oh, well, we got way more funding than we thought, so we've got to make this way bigger and better, and then it just ends up taking a lot longer, and the finished product is just too overbloated for what people originally... Like, I'm gonna assume that if you make a product that people wanted to fund, and they already know what the stretch goals are, you really don't need to add anything to that. They're gonna be happy with paying the money that got them the thing. And you can just make more copies of the thing you made. Now, Flea Mortals, which I had seen advertised a lot on YouTube, Matt Colville had been talking quite a bit about this. A lot of reward tiers. They're talking a lot about goblins. So, I mean, I guess that's a thing. Goblins are almost always run in games, aren't they?
I try to not run them unless I have a fun reason to do it, personally.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh.
I just don't really care for them, and it's just, they're always in games, so why? Do something different.
Right. right. Yeah, the examples that they kind of give are mostly like the Queen of Goblins. Not just any goblin, but a Queen of Goblins. Bargnot, the Queen of Goblins. So there you go. So, yeah, I think that's good. I'm glad that they got funded. I don't run campaigns because no one wants that, but do you see the benefit in having more detailed or more options for monsters when you're running a game? Has that
Sure,
ever come up?
I always like more options for monsters, because then you can make it not feel like every other campaign that you've always run. It's like, oh, it's a little different. This goblin isn't your standard goblin.
Right. One of the things that they mention in Flea Immortals, I did a callback. There you go.
There you go.
If a monster is big enough and bad enough to challenge the entire party on its own, or if it just makes sense for the Queen of the Goblins to be better than a normal goblin boss, we make a named, unique, action-oriented version of that monster. This is something we originally developed in the Chain of Acheron. The Black Iron Pact was the first test for this design. So, yeah. Basically, a prototype or a template that you can use to make these more unique. I guess
Okay.
maybe you could think of it a little bit more like in Diablos. Remember, there would be like the unique monsters that you would come across, and they would have
Yeah,
specific
unnamed
drops.
ones.
Yeah, the specific ones. So a little bit like that, but options for D&D. So I think our takeaway, though, from this, just to kind of wrap this part of the conversation up for the next one, is that yeah, Kickstarter is still alive and well, and
Apparently, tabletop is one of the biggest sectors on there currently. So,
along with video gaming, which also gets quite heavily funded. But we'll be interested to know.
Star Citizen.
You know, one day, Star Citizen will actually come out in its full version, which, who knows? You just need to spend another few $100 million. They'll get there. Anyway, fun times, everybody. But we will try to get an update together when the campaigns close to let people know where they land, just because I'd be interested to know how high up they go for, I guess I'll do it one more time, Flea Mortals and Old Gods of Appalachia. There. I hope you're happy, because I'm certainly not. All right.
For the record, Star Citizen has raised over $400 million.
And is still not out.
As of November of last year.
And still technically not.
It's still a decade away from publishing.
We think.
At least.
Yeah.